After several checks, nothing was found. There were no suggestive symbols, drawings, or writings on the prophet's corpse. Tuyanbio was too impatient, so he reached out and felt all over the skeleton, but still found nothing. The prophet's remains were in a sitting posture, legs crossed, one hand resting on the side of the coffin, one hand stretched straight in front of the knee. His hands did not point anywhere. Aside from a rotted, pulpy shirt and a goatskin draped over him, there was nothing else. I searched around again to see if there was anything like a hidden lock, but this tomb was carved into the mountain with solid rocks on all sides. In some other places, there were small, narrow cracks. Reaching in, I could feel cool drafts of wind, suggesting the tomb was not too far from the mountain peak. But without explosives and tools, opening an escape route from here seemed harder than climbing to heaven. The only entrance to the stone chamber was the crack we had entered. There used to be a stone door there. When we entered, to avoid falling debris, we basically did not carefully observe the path outside. The rift in the mountain connected the crack we ran into with the path into the tomb, but this path was now sealed by debris. It was impossible to return through this route. All three of us were as agitated as ants in a hot pan. Suddenly, the ground beneath our feet shook violently. In our ears, we only heard a series of faint cracking sounds reverberating within the mountain. The sound grew louder and louder, and the ground tremors became stronger and stronger. It seemed the explosion had greatly increased the internal expansion force of the mountain. After 2 rounds of cracking, the pressure continued to increase. A third round of landslides would occur any moment now. Could the prophet's prophecy refer to this omen? A violent tremor shook the tomb, and crack sounds echoed. 3 large cracks appeared, one on the ground, and the other 2, one on the right and one on the left, perfectly positioned at the 2 edges of the tomb. They varied in size, but all were passable. Tuyanbio cursed loudly. Damn it. Choose one of 3? Is this little prophet trying to mess with us? Each of us will crawl into a crack. Whoever gets out, gets out. It's better than being buried alive in this place. Shirley pointed at the prophet's remains. The prophet has shown us the way. Her voice trembled, unable to suppress her rising emotion. Tuyanbio and I looked down. The crack in the ground had caused the stone coffin to sink more than halfway. The prophet's remains tilted to one side, his right index finger pointing exactly towards the crack on the left side of the tomb. We quickly knelt and bowed, thanking the holy prophets for their blessings and protection. At this moment, more and more broken rocks fell from the tomb's ceiling. Continuous rumbling sounds filled our ears. This tomb was no longer safe to stand in. I had Tuyanbio carry Professor Chen on his back. Shirley and I carried Yikin. We crawled into the crack on the left side of the tomb. After a few steps, a blinding light filled the space, and above our heads, the long awaited sky appeared. This spot was only a few meters from the mountaintop, but the mountain's interior was shaking violently, with countless cracks appearing. Underfoot were only broken rocks, making every step slippery and difficult. Tuyanbio bent down. Shirley stepped onto his shoulder and climbed up first. She then used the same method to help Professor Chen up. I let Tuyanbio go up first, then lowered a rope to pull up Yikin's body. I couldn't let the girl be buried forever in this mountain. Tuyanbio seemed to struggle climbing. I pushed from below, Shirley pulled from above. It took a lot of effort to get him up. At this moment, the rock face behind me echoed with rumbling sounds. I flinched and turned back to look, only to see the mountain behind me collapsing. The entire Zoklama mountain split in 2. The giant dome covering the ghost cave could no longer hold, and was continuously caving in. At the same time, the stone pillar holding the Jingju queen's coffin from the monstrous corpse, fragrance flower to all the gold, silver jewels and big-eyed stone statues were all smashed and fell into the bottomless ghost cave. A stream of black water poured out from the ghost cave. Everything that fell was immediately swallowed by the whirlpool. The mountain's interior was black, the cave was black, and the ground behind me was like a monstrous devil opening its huge black mouth, devouring everything. The sight was dizzying. One hand gripped the rock face firmly, the other hugged Yikin's body tightly. I dared not loosen my grip, fearing I would fall into the ghost cave along with the collapsing rocks behind me. Tuyen from above frantically called down, "Nyat, climb up quickly. Leave the girl's body, we can't worry about the dead right now." I had originally intended to bring Yikin's body out no matter what, but now my left arm, holding Yikin, was numb and tired. It seemed if I didn't let go, I would surely fall down with her. The only option was to release my hand. Unexpectedly, Yikin's arm hooked onto the bag on my hip. Pulled down by the tens of kilograms of Yikin's body weight, the bag's opening burst open, and the prophet's goatskin book flew out, falling with her body. I watched the book with wide eyes, an indescribable feeling of despondency. The prophet's prophecy stated very clearly that when the goatskin book touched the ground, a sandstorm would occur, submerging Zaklama mountain. It truly was a case of what you hate, heaven gives you. With things having come to this, I had no choice but to follow fate. I used both my hands and feet to climb up the mountaintop. Suddenly, behind me, I heard the faint, mournful cry of a girl. This cry seemed to be Yikin's. My body suddenly grew heavy, as if an invisible force was pulling me, trying to drag me down. Sweat poured from me. The desert sun had by now sunk more than halfway below the horizon. My current position was in the shadow of the mountain's interior, surrounded by pitch black rocks. That moment truly felt no different from touching the gates of hell. I struggled to climb further up, but the rock I was standing on below had collapsed. All I could do was rely on the strength of my two hands gripping the mountain rock. I couldn't turn my head to look, but even if I could, I wouldn't want to. I might be too scared and lose my grip, falling into the ghost cave below, which would be extremely dangerous. I tried my best to force myself not to listen to that crying sound anymore, but the crying in my ears grew increasingly mournful, each sound swirling into my heart, making me ache. My body grew heavier and heavier, and I couldn't help but want to let go. On the mountaintop, Tuyen and Shirley Yang saw me looking gloomy and unusual. They tried to reach out and pull me up, but the distance was a bit too far to reach. Seeing the cracks widen and the entire mountain about to collapse completely in an instant, and having no rope, the two had no choice but to take off their belts and lower them down. Called by the two people above, I felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown in my face on a hot summer afternoon. I shivered, instantly regaining my senses. The crying in my ears had stopped, and the pulling force behind me instantly vanished. Not daring to be careless, I grabbed Tuyen belt and climbed right up to the mountaintop. The sun had almost completely sunk into the desert. Whistling winds carried sand and dust. The sky and earth seemed to be covered by an ominous darkness. Old Anlaman had said before that this type of wind was a harbinger of an approaching black sandstorm. The doomsday of Zaklama mountain, as prophesied by the prophet, had finally arrived. Tuyen and I supported Professor Chen. At this moment, the old man no longer reacted to anything, remaining blank like a log, letting others control him. If pulled, he would follow, not knowing what tiredness was. But he couldn't stop. If he stopped, he would sit still on the ground, and no matter what we did, we couldn't pull him up again. We could only drag and pull him down the mountain like this. The mountain face adjacent to the ancient Jingju city had completely collapsed. The colossal mountain, hollowed out more than halfway inside, perfectly filled the mouth of the ghost cave, permanently sealing the entrance. The side we were running down was the entrance to the Zaklama Canyon. We intended, after descending, to go through this mountain range to find old Anlaman's camel caravan. The sandstorm had begun to rise. Without camels, relying only on this number 11 vehicle would not allow us to escape. Unexpectedly, as soon as we reached the foot of the mountain, we heard the sound of camel hooves echoing in the canyon. Old Anlaman, with a panicked expression, was shouting to drive the camels out. Tuyen cursed loudly. "Old man, is your oath like farts?" Old Anlaman didn't expect us to appear at the canyon entrance, and frantically explained, "Great God! It seems our meeting here is also Hutai's arrangement." We didn't want to waste words with him. We quickly lifted Professor Chen onto a camel, and each of us found one to climb onto. Old Anlaman kept asking where the others were. I replied, "Don't ask anymore, they're all dead. Now is not the time to talk about these things. Wherever we can avoid the sandstorm, quickly take everyone there. The sky had completely plunged into darkness. This time it was a whirlwind. It seemed the eye of the storm was the ghost cave, which had been filled by the mountain. The wind force grew stronger, and sand stung our faces painfully. Old Anlaman also didn't expect the storm to arrive so quickly, without any warning signs. Apart from Zoklama Mountain and ancient Jingzhou City, this entire area was a vast desert. There was nowhere to hide. However, if it was a whirlwind, the higher the eye of the storm, the safer it would be. This would depend on Hu Tai's mood. Old Anlaman let out a long whistle, rode the lead camel, and led the way. The entire caravan rushed straight west. Strange echoes rang out behind us. At first they sounded like wolves howling and ghosts crying, then like surging waves on flat ground. In an instant, a furious wind rose. Strong winds carried sand and dust, blanketing the sky and earth. The world turned dark, and visibility shrank to its extreme. Although we had used scarves to cover our mouths, countless grains of sand still got into our ears and noses. After running a considerable distance, the camel caravan stopped obeying commands. Old Anlaman ordered the caravan to stop, but no one could hear what anyone was saying anymore. He gestured with his hands, herding the frightened camels into a circle. I guessed his intention was that if we kept running, the camel caravan would scatter. Once separated, no one would be able to survive. Now, the only way was to build a sand wall on the spot. Everyone would hide amidst the camels, and the rest was just to pray to Hu Tai. I nodded to him, showing I understood, then told Shirley Yang to wrap Professor Chen in a rug and take shelter from the sandstorm right there. Tuyen Bio and I vigorously shoveled sand. Old Anlaman, after arranging the camels, also came back to help, building a simple sand wall around the camels. Then he used rugs to blindfold the camels, to prevent them from fleeing in fright. Afterwards, everyone wrapped themselves in rugs and sat huddled together. Fortunately, we had escaped the eye of the storm. The sandstorm at the outer edge was already so terrible. In the eye of the storm, it would probably tear people to shreds. Old Anlaman's camels were quite experienced. Huddled together now, they stopped panicking. When partially buried by sand, they would shake themselves and shift up a bit, not allowing themselves to be completely covered. Not until noon the next day did the sandstorm gradually subside. That entire night we had continuously dug sand walls, already exhausted. Now, seeing the sandstorm pass, we dared to peek out. All around were undulating sand dunes like waves, the sand surface sculpted into ripples by the wind. Ancient Jingzhou City, the sacred Zoklama Mountain, the Queen's Coffin, the Corpse, Fragrance Flower, the Tomb of the Holy Prophet, along with countless ancient secrets, and also He Eguo, Yikan, Shujian, Sa Dipeng. All were forever buried deep beneath the golden sand. Professor Chen also peeked his head out from the rug, looking up at the sky with a foolish smile. Shirley Yang walked over to brush the sand off his head. Old Anlaman knelt on the ground praying, thanking Hu Tai for his mercy. Tuyen Bio rummaged through all the luggage looking for water, but found nothing. He then spread his hands towards me, his face utterly helpless. I could only shake my head. At that time, we were solely focused on fleeing for our lives, basically not thinking about water. Moreover, we had passed the safety limit 7 days ago. Now, wanting to turn back, how could it be easy? The path to the underground Tu-Du River was also completely buried. With the strength of just a few of us, we couldn't dig it up. Without a single drop of water, I feared we couldn't last a day in the desert. Drinking salty water from sand pools and camel blood was also not an option. Just thinking of the tragedy of dying of thirst in the desert, I felt it would be better to die in the ghost cave. Without water in the desert, it was like living people drained of all blood. Everyone was helpless, sitting blankly in place. Suddenly, old Anlaman exclaimed, "Oh!" Hu Tai's messenger. Not far from us, on a sand dune, a white shadow appeared. I thought I was hallucinating from hunger and thirst, and quickly rubbed my eyes to look again carefully. It turned out to be the white camel we had encountered before, on the way to Xie City. It was leisurely strolling on the sand dune, slowly heading west. Old Anlaman was extremely moved, unable to speak fluently anymore. The white camel appearing in the cursed black desert proved that the ancient curse had vanished. Hu Tai had reclaimed this stretch of desert. Following Hu Tai's messenger, we would surely find water. I didn't know if his words were true or false. Last time, he said travelers who saw a white camel in the desert would be safe along the way. Now he was saying something about the desert curse having disappeared. But at this moment, it was better to believe than not. Following the white camel might really lead us to a water source. Everyone immediately reorganized the camel caravan, following closely behind the white camel. That tall, large white camel walked steadily under the scorching sun for 3 or 4 hours, circling a long stretch of sand, and then, sure enough, a very small pool of water appeared. Desert thorn bushes grew on all 4 sides of the pool. The water was not very clear, probably containing some minerals. Animals could drink it directly, but humans could not drink it immediately. The camels could not wait any longer and bent down to drink. Shirley rummaged for some disinfectant pills. First, she poured water into the filter device, and after filtering, added the disinfectant pills before distributing it to everyone. This pool of water was probably an offshoot of the underground Tu-Du River. Due to the desert shifting at night, some of the river water, being relatively close to the surface, seeped out. Everyone lit a fire by the water pool and baked some bread to eat. I did not tell them about feeling someone pulling me from behind when climbing the mountaintop. This matter was half real, half illusory. Since being tormented by that damned corpse, fragrance flower, I could no longer distinguish between what was real and what was fake. Not to mention this, even the entire sequence of events that occurred from ancient Jingzhou city to the ghost cave, the boundary between reality and illusion was extremely blurry. Tuyen Bio and I sat recounting the events that happened in Zoklama Mountain. It all seemed like a suffocating nightmare. Tuyen Bio said, "That damn dog, Tailflower, is terrifying. Maybe we never even went to ancient Jingzhou city. Perhaps it was all just illusions caused by it." Shirley Yang, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "That's not it. Now that we've escaped danger, I've had time to think. The characteristics of illusions caused by the corpse, fragrance flower, are very distinct. It can only exploit existing memories in the brain, but cannot create things we've never seen before. The queen's coffin, the ghost cave, the prophet's tomb, the prophecy. These things really exist. We had seen black snakes before. As for the hypnotic stone mural of the prophet that made us slaughter each other, the drawings on the stone coffin are real drawings. We had seen the prophecy outside, which is why the corpse, fragrance flower, could create illusions for us inside the stone casket." I immediately said, "Indeed, heroes share common views. I also thought so, but I didn't dare to confirm it, so I never spoke up. Now, shouldn't we discuss a plan to leave this desert?" Shirley Yang replied, "Then we'll have to trouble old Anlaman. He is a living map in the desert. Let's hear his opinion first." Old Anlaman, seeing the young lady speak, drew a few lines in the sand. "This spot is roughly our current location. Heading south leads to the Nia ruins, a very long distance. Everywhere is desert. Even with enough water, we might not reach it. To the east is Lopnur, with desert in between, and beyond that the vast endless Gobi Desert. To the north is the direction we came from, which is also the way back to Xie City, but we have ventured deep into the desert, and returning would certainly not be easy. Now it seems all 3 directions, east, south and north, are not easy to travel. Only west remains. If we head straight in this direction, we will encounter the Tarim River, the largest inland river in the desert. From our current position, if we travel quickly, it will take approximately 10 days to reach the confluence of the 3 rivers, Tarim, Yarkand, and Hotan. Once there, things will be much simpler. We can replenish water once, then continue west for another 6 or 7 days, and we will be close to Aksu. Near there are military forces and an oil field from whom we can ask for help. Currently, our most lacking resource, water, has been fully replenished. It should last us 10 days. We still have some food. In the desert, drinking water is much more important than food. If we run out of food, we can still eat camel meat. We saved every bit of filtered water from the sand pool, enough for 10 days. Then we set off according to the plan. Along the way, hunger and thirst were unavoidable, as was the harsh sun and wind. We slept by day and traveled by night. Finally, on the 12th day, we reached the Tarim River. After that, we continued west, and on the 3rd day, we encountered an oil worker who was in the desert hunting yellow goats. By then, Professor Chen was barely clinging to life. The feeling of slowly emerging from the desert's dead zone is not easily understood by people living in normal circumstances. From then on, I developed a habit. Whenever I was home, I would drink water. No matter how full the cup was, I would always drink it all in one gulp.